Today on Newsline, farming grants falling short and identifying Melbourne's homeless. Hello and welcome to Newsline. I'm Jennifer Grieve. Also today, the crackdown on binge drinking hits sporting clubs, and we'll have all today's finance, sport and weather. But now let's take a look at today's news with Patrick Stafford.
Thanks, Jennifer. Some drivers have complained they were stuck in the Burnley Tunnel for more than an hour after a multi-car pile-up forced the tunnel's closure. There were no serious injuries in this morning's 8-vehicle chain reaction crash. Although the tunnel has now opened, a truck involved in the 8-car collision spilled its load of sugar in the tunnel. The federal opposition will use the Senate to block the government's Fuel Watch scheme, hinting at a possible early election. Shadow Treasurer Malcolm Turnbull says the Liberals will block part of the bill which requires fuel prices to be fixed 24 hours in advance. But the PM says any attempt to block the bill could result in a double dissolution election next year, which would be the first since 1974. Aftershocks are still causing damage after China's Sichuan earthquake 2 weeks ago that claimed more than 70,000 lives. In two major jolts yesterday, 63 people were injured and 400,000 homes collapsed. The Chinese Seismological Network says the shocks measured 5.4 and 5.7 magnitudes. Prime Minister Kevin Rudd says he will not apologise for labelling Bill Henson's photography exhibition as absolutely revolting. Henson's photographs, which depict nude adolescents, were seized by police from a Sydney art gallery last week. Defending the Prime Minister, Premier John Brumby says Mr Rudd should not be forced to back down from his remarks. In community news, a Blackburn medical clinic is set to close next month because it is losing money with no hope of recovery. The Gordon Crescent Medical Centre will shut its doors on June 13. Primary Health Managing Director Edmund Bateman says insufficient funding and a lack of general practitioners have led to the closure. And that's what's making news today. Jennifer?
Thanks, Patrick. With global sales of more than $100 billion every year, the bottled water industry is one of the great marketing success stories of our time. But bottled water comes at a considerable cost, and environmental groups are worried about its toll on the planet. Alexandra Hooper reports.
Environmentalists are calling bottled water Australia's new eco-disaster. They say the plastic water bottle sucks up valuable fuels and creates mountains of rubbish.
65% of drinking bottles end up in landfill or in the environment as rubbish, which could be recycled. And if there was better public place infrastructure for recycling, out of your home, then that would definitely increase.
Drinking a bottle of water has the same impact on the environment as driving a car for 1 hour. Its production generates up to 600 times more carbon dioxide than tap water.
Australians have access to some of the best tap water in the world, and yet the popularity of bottled water continues to rise at a rate of 10% per year. Despite the monetary and environmental costs, Australians consumed over 550 million litres of bottled water in 2007 alone.
The bottled water industry says plastic bottles are not an eco-disaster.
Well, it's a nonsense claim because bottled water is primarily just another commercial beverage that competes against other commercial beverages.
Although bottled water provides a no-calorie alternative to soft drink, it costs on average $2.40 a litre compared to less than 1 cent for the same amount of tap water.
You can save money and you can save the environment by drinking tap water.
Alexandra Hooper, Newsline.
Obesity in Australia is constantly increasing, and so are the costs. In 2006, obesity cost every individual Australian the equivalent of $1,000 to pay for obesity-related illness and infrastructure. Elise Nashel-Woodhams reports.
It's no secret Australians are getting fatter. State government statistics show almost half of Victorian adults are overweight or obese. But it's the economic as well as the health costs that are hitting hard. Last year, obesity-related illnesses cost Australians $21 billion.
And I think the effect on the Australian public health system is enormous. It really has the potential to be the biggest public health threat that we've faced to date.
The Royal Melbourne Hospital has installed larger beds and reinforced arm rails. The Victorian Ambulance Service recently ordered 5 new megalift ambulances. Reports show it costs an extra $145 a day to treat morbidly obese patients in hospital.
If you look at a bariatric hoist with a scale, it's $12,000. Beds range from $8,000 to $30,000.
Suppliers are also seeing an increase in demand for mobility aids and reinforced seating. Jane Fothergill, a physiotherapist at Independent Living Centre, advises obese people on buying equipment which can help them live a normal life.
We would see that everybody has the same rights to be comfortable, to be functional, and to be as independent as possible. And it makes no difference whether the client is tall, short, large, or small.
About 3.24 million Australians are obese, with the figure likely to double by 2025. When contacted, State Health Minister Daniel Andrews would not comment on his department's plans for future spending. Elise Nashel-Woodhams, Newsline.
Drought-affected farmers have received billions of dollars in federal and state aid over the last decade to help them get through the exceptional circumstances. But now, even farmers have joined a growing number of people dissatisfied with the grant system, as Jessica Simons reports.
It's dry, it's dusty, and good rain may still be years away. As a result of the drought, most of rural Victoria has been declared as areas of exceptional circumstance. Many farmers with diminished incomes applied for the government support, but were rejected for what many argue was merely good financial management.
You know, two farms side by side, one has been a bit more prudent in investing off farm, which is good management. They may be a bit more profitable and have done that. The threshold was fairly low, so they immediately don't get assistance.
Despite the grant thresholds being recently lifted, farmers believe the money would be better spent in long-term business management schemes.
I think that's where the government will help in the future, is that we have to look long-term. Farming is long-term, so we need to look at long-term self-help schemes.
The drought has forced some farmers to consider whether or not they would sell their property due to mounting debt and limited income.
I'd be reluctant to sell the property, there's no doubt about that, and it's not a monetary issue. I would much rather see the place remain within the family, whoever that might be. You know,
and it's about running a viable enterprise too, and having a viable farm in these variable years.
With the drought showing no signs of breaking, the VFF believe that future government assistance will focus on educational programs, teaching farmers how to sustain their business in a dry climate.
We could see a cultural shift of government policy to more preparedness for climate change, getting the businesses structured so it can meet the challenges of climate change.
The VFF is urging the state government to continue financial and business management programs, even if the drought does break, to help young farmers.
We actually spent a lot of time in the last couple of years getting our young farmers together and actually directing them to where we should be advocating policy for their business and their future and their environment.
It is hoped the next generation of business-savvy farmers will be able to produce food for the nation in even the driest of climates. Jessica Simons, Newsline.
Melbourne's billboards are getting sexier, and experts are concerned about the impact sexually explicit advertising is having on children. Unlike television advertisements, billboards confront the public 24 hours a day, open for all eyes to see. As advertisers exploit the adage that sex sells, family groups say advertising codes are not going far enough to regulate the problem. The Australian Family Association says suggestive billboard advertisements confront children with images that may harm their development. The group is calling for an overhaul of the Advertising Standards Bureau's Code of Ethics. Coming up after the break, the ugly side of our fashion industry, plus the latest finance and sports news.